What's going on, everybody? My name is George Khalife, and this is episode 30 of Let's Grab Coffee. I'm here with my good friend, Jay Rosenzweig, who's the founding partner and CEO of Rosenzweig & Company. Jay is an expert in designing, building, and attracting world-class leaders and teams for his clients. He's also a strong advocate for equity and equality in the workspace, but more importantly, he's very involved in the community and trying to enact positive transformation for people around him. Jay, thanks again, man. I really appreciate you
Thank you for having me. It's awesome.
Quick question. So I was doing a bit of digging around. You know, your background studying in McGill is in law and philosophy, but yet you started a world-class search firm. So how did that kind of come about?
So it was never a dream of mine to necessarily practice law per se. Definitely wasn't particularly interested in the corporate law world. Studied at McGill, as you said, for 7 years. Did a philosophy degree and 2 law degrees, both common law and civil law, and moved to Toronto upon graduation and articled, became a member of the bar. The funny thing is my wife had seen an ad in the newspaper during those days in the mid-90s. We'd actually look at the career section of the newspaper, and there was an ad which said, looking for a director of business affairs for a large entertainment corporation. If you're interested, please apply to the following recruiting firm who's representing this business. And so it looked kind of interesting, entertainment. They were looking for a lawyer with like 12 years experience. I didn't have that by any means, but I didn't know anything about recruitment. And I just figured I'll apply to that job, and maybe one of these recruiters will call me based on my application, and I'll hustle my way in, and maybe they have other jobs in business that I could look at. So long story short, I got a call from an associate at that firm. We had a nice conversation. He said, you're like 10 years underqualified for that particular job, but you seem to have a very interesting background. Just tell me about yourself a little bit. And so I did, and he's like, well, you've got a great background. You handle yourself very well on the phone. We actually have an opening here. Would you be interested in applying? And so that's kind of one thing led to another. At first I thought, what am I going to be a headhunter for? I just became a lawyer. But the more research I did into the high end of the industry, the more I realized this is a pretty fascinating field. And everyone at this firm had such tremendous educational backgrounds and whatnot that I thought, you know what, maybe there's something to it. So anyway, I joined the firm. That was 1997.
Wow.
Korn Ferry, the largest recruiting firm in the world, bought the firm in 2000, which was a fantastic experience for me. I ended up being a very young partner at the world's largest high-end recruiting firm. Stayed on for a bit there, and then decided ultimately to break away and start my own firm in 2004. And we haven't looked back. Hunt Scanlon, the publisher out of Chicago, which covers our industry, described us as the leading international boutique. We're doing work in places all around the world, like Dubai and Brazil and Hong Kong and all across America, working for some of the largest companies in the world, helping earlier stage businesses and everything in between. So it's been a fun ride.
So tell me something. I think this is a phenomenal journey for one. And your focus is really exclusively with C-suite for the most part,
yes.
I believe, right?
Yes.
In a recent interview, you were kind of talking like just bare bones. The 3 things or the 3 pillars you should always focus on really is motivation. Do I even want this job? Fit, am I even right for this job? And strength, am I the right person for this job?
That's right.
Is that advice that you've kind of carried for C-suite, but kind of all roles at large?
I think it all applies because at the end of the day, you don't want the round peg in the square hole or vice versa. At the end of the day, you need a mutually compatible relationship, employer, employee, partners, whatever it might be. At the end of the day, it really has to work. So you need to be motivated to join a business. You need to have the strength to do whatever the job at hand is. And if you have that kind of fit, at the end of the day, you're gonna have a successful life, a successful career, and you're gonna have the inner peace to do what you need to do across all aspects of your life.
How did you, when you talk sort of about success and a successful career, looking backwards, right? And as you sort of projected what was sort of unfolding in your life, how did you measure success? Like, what did success mean to you then, and what does success mean to you now?
Well, success to me always meant the same thing, and that is having a positive effect on society, having a positive effect on the people in and around you, having great relationships, and really developing a sense of inner peace, because you know that you're conducting yourself in a way that you could be proud of. So I never really measure success financially. I measure success in effort, and I measure success in the way you treat others and the relationships you develop and affecting the world, as I say, in a very positive way.
So, and a large part of that as well, even as an extension of your business, is a report, an annual report that you publish, which is the Rosenzweig and Company report, but that looks at really equality and equity in the workspace as it relates to gender. Can you kind of talk about that? How did that start, and what was the motivation behind that, really?
Yeah, so in law school, I met a very important mentor. His name is Erwin Kotler. Yes, he was a professor there at the time, and international human rights champion, represented political prisoners back in the day, such as Nelson Mandela and Natan Sharansky. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, he was nominated by former Prime Minister Paul Martin for the Nobel Peace Prize. And he went on to become a parliamentarian and Canada's Minister of Justice. And so here I am in the business world, staying in touch with Professor Kotler and observing his actions, and a couple of the things that he did inspired me, particularly to write the Women's Report, and that was the fact that he was the first man on the Women's Caucus, and he also transformed our Supreme Court into the most gender representative in the world at that time. And I thought to myself, you know, it'd be interesting to look at, this was 2006, to look at the status of women in the corporate world. And as you probably know, all public companies in Canada are required to disclose the 5 highest paid executive officers in their ranks. So I looked at the 100 largest publicly traded companies in Canada and looked at the 5 highest paid. So let's say the pool of 500 top executive officers in Canada, and measured literally what percentage of those 500 top executive officers were women. And what I discovered at that time in our first report was the number was 4.6%. I thought the numbers would be low, but I never thought that they would be that low. If you fast forward to today, we're just under 10%. So the good news is that the numbers have doubled, but the bad news is that we're under 10%. So that's become, in addition to human rights generally, women's rights has become a very particularly important project for me.
Yeah, and actually a highlight in the report, which I really like, and I thought I'd just kind of disclose here, it says that there's 540 named executive officers at Canada's 100 largest public companies.
Yes.
Out of that 540, 51 are women. How does that make you feel?
It doesn't make me feel too good. First of all, I think that businesses are doing themselves a disservice by not tapping deeply enough into 50% of the population. We know that from study after study, be it Harvard studies and McKinsey studies, that the more diversity you have around the table, the better the business results, because it stands to logic. The more diversity, the more creativity, the bigger ideas that will come out of the table, rather than having a boardroom of 10, 70-year-old white people. Right? It's inevitable that based on different experiences and different demographics, you're going to have great perspectives, including, for a simple example would be in the consumer space. Like, how couldn't you tap into half the population in the consumer space, right, to get ideas on what might work and what might not.
And I love that you actually come with a solution. So as I was listening to this a little more, you said something that really resonated, and you said basically what's happening is people are tapping into the Rolodex, right? And everybody has, I'm assuming, a good network, hopefully. And what you're doing is, whether it's technology or relationship based, you're tapping into the old Rolodex of relationships that you already have, but most of them, from research, are comprised of men.
Right. So by definition, if 90% of the pool at the top levels is male, if you're tapping into the traditional pool, you're just recycling the same old, same old.
So what should companies do in that sense? Like if that's what they're already doing?
So you need to do the original research, like we do.
Yeah.
What we do with our clients is we try to understand, okay, what are the business objectives underlying your decision to make this really important executive hire? And then we develop a customized research strategy designed to meet the business issues at play. It's a very labor-intensive process. We have as good a network as anybody, but we only supplement our projects with the current network that we have. We dive deep. We go levels below to see if there's up-and-comers who might work. And we actually specialize as well in diversity search.
So you really put it into focus.
And that's a whole other sophisticated approach that a lot of people really don't get the importance of. So we're very big on that, and it's very consistent with my worldviews, and from an execution point of view, we try to marry the execution to our philosophies.
And I just, maybe last point on this,
Sure.
I think there's a lot of optimism, and again, one of the things that I heard you say, just for the context, so people don't lose too much hope and faith, but it's interesting. I have 3 stats quick. 60% of university grads are now female, 50% of the workspace is female, 50% of provincial premiers, this, I mean, was really interesting, are female as well. And so a word that you use is inertia, right? We're gaining momentum. Maybe it's not at the pace that we'd like it, but to reassure people listening and watching this that there is a positive sign.
I agree. I actually always say that I like to look at the glass as being half full, and I think in this case it is. There's tons of inertia, even in a broader sense. If you look at things like Time's Up, the Me Too movement, people are being much more cognizant of some of the bad stuff that's happened historically, and also really trying to focus on even forcing oneself not to be potentially infected by subconscious bias. So the more the more present we are in really understanding consciously that we need to put more effort into diversity, I think the better the results, and I'm optimistic. We're paying attention to this issue more and more. They say I got into the issue in 2006 before it was sexy. Now everyone's on the bandwagon. So I kind of have a little bit of credibility in that I got in earlier.
You almost like pioneered it from backing it up, right?
It's so it's been a very gratifying ride in that sense. But it doesn't feel too good at this moment in time to be just hovering around 10%. I think that the speed will accelerate though.
This is maybe personal curiosity, but I'm sure people have this, and this is an open conversation, right? And so I just want to kind of, from your perspective, when you talk, I think you used the word systematic barriers, and you said, well, sometimes women will face the challenge that they have kids at home, and all of a sudden, at work, it kind of makes things a little cloudy. Talk to me about some of those barriers, but more importantly, what I want to know from you is, with this 10% now that's being increased, is it genuinely that companies actually care about this? Or is it so that because it's become more transparent with certain movements that came up, that from a CSR perspective, they're trying to, be more adhesive to it? I just want to.
Well, I think you'll always have those who live more in the dark ages and are doing it sort of more to kind of tick a box. But I'd say for the most part, the new generation of leaders genuinely care and genuinely understand the notion that, first of all, most importantly, treating people equally is of the utmost importance.
It's a priority.
But secondly, that it actually will help their business. Not only from the point of view of, hey, I tick the box and I can say I have a certain percentage of diversity, but because it truly creates a much more powerful business model.
Right, and by diversity, we're not, in this context, of course, gender, but also ethnicity and just perspectives, right? I've really felt this as well, just even working in teams, whether it's sports or professional, like you really kind of feel the difference.
I can't say too much yet, but it looks like I'll be partnering on a fund that invests only in businesses that benefit racial minorities or businesses that are founded by racial minorities. So the issue of equality and diversity, to me, is much, much broader than gender equality, although gender equality, of course, is really important to me as well.
Amazing. Going back just quickly to the CEOs, right? CFOs, the C-suites that you kind of deal with. Before we started, I kind of asked you just, from a curious perspective, have you seen patterns when you're hiring top talent, right? From your expertise, what are those patterns? What kind of characteristics make someone a really good CEO or CFO or COO?
I think the best leaders are extremely well grounded. They are not overly egotistical. In fact, some might be surprised by this, but I feel the best leaders have deep humility. So when I'm interviewing a candidate for a leadership role, I like to hear when they talk about their accomplishments that, part of it was due to great momentum or great wind at their back from certain market conditions, or credit being given to the team that they had working with them, or other things of that matter. When it's all about the I get a little bit skeptical. I feel that the best leaders are the ones that come at it from a point of view of humility and strength, and not to get too cosmic about it, but even a position of inner peace. Because when you have that kind of clarity and you understand your position in the universe, you're able to make really great decisions that aren't clouded by toxicity or things that really are not amenable to making the firm choices when you're faced with tough options.
Wow. In your journey, to become a leader yourself, and I regard you as a friend, but also honestly a mentor in many ways. I mean, maybe not directly, but even the things you do, which I'm going to save for later. But one of the things I found within your journey as I was studying kind of your past is, and you mentioned your mentor, Erwin Kotler, and just curious, like, how did that kind of come about? I know he was a professor of yours, but how did you really build that relationship of mentor and then him becoming really a friend?
So Professor Kotler, in many ways, was the most well-known professor at McGill at the time, and very prominent and respected. And so that's one piece of it. So park that for a sec. Second piece is there's a very daunting exercise that all of the McGill law students go through. Most law schools have it. It's called moot court.
Okay.
So essentially, you're put in front of 3 pretend judges. It's 3 professors to argue an appeal case.
Okay.
And you don't know which professors you're going to get. I hadn't come across Professor Kotler before this. So I walk in the room. I'm already nervous. And who's one of the 3 judges? Professor Kotler. So I plead my case, and in characteristic form, he's got his glasses on top of his head like this, and he's writing very furiously during the presentation. My presentation's done, and he looks at me, and in his characteristic way, he complimented me for what I had done right. And then proceeded to list 10 brilliant points as to where I could have done better, and each point was interrelated to the other, which is also a trademark of his. And I was fascinated, and I was sort of in shock and awe. And I thought to myself, this is a person I can learn from, and not just about the law. So I went up to him after and asked if I might set up an appointment to sit in his office with him to learn more.
Is it like shadowing? Like, you just want to see his behavior?
No, just to learn more about how I could have done better on this particular presentation.
Wow.
So he graciously said absolutely, and I went into his office, and we had this great long talk, and I learned a lot in that one session. And I ended up taking a number of his courses. I ended up as a research assistant for him in the summer, and the relationship just rolled from there to the point now where I'm a very active board member on his in his organization. It's called the Raoul Wallenberg Center for Human Rights, where we are representing sort of the Nelson Mandelas of today in places like Saudi Arabia and Venezuela and China and Iran and all around the world. In fact,
that's amazing.
Our client Raif Badawi in Saudi Arabia, who's been in prison for a number of years for blogging on issues of human rights, has been the subject of tension between the Saudi Arabian government and Canada.
It's really interesting. I mean, part of my community, they're kind of early 20s, and I'm sure that's kind of why I asked. They're in this process now of trying to find a mentor, and what I parsed out from your equation is basically no opportunity is too small. You went in there, and there were 3 juries, but one of them intrigued you because of what he was saying and kind of the constructive feedback, but you also were proactive in asking for more feedback.
That's really important.
Right, and then you just grew the opportunity from there, so that's interesting.
Yeah, and that's a pattern throughout my life. Just going out and perhaps even going out of your comfort zone, but showing up in places that are important to you or interesting to you, and you just never know what showing up will lead to. I'll give you an example of how I got into McGill Law School in the first place. Which maybe I would have, maybe I wouldn't have. But what happened was I had just finished my philosophy degree, and I was backpacking through Europe with a friend of mine, and applied to a bunch of law schools.
In Europe?
No, in Canada.
In Canada.
But so I applied, and then I went off to Europe with my friend to see where I would get in. And rather than sitting home waiting for letters, we decided to do this.
Nice.
And I got into a couple of schools, but the school I most wanted to get into was McGill.
Okay.
And anyway, I was on a waiting list at McGill, and my parents at the time were at home, and they were opening up my mail, but they themselves went on a vacation for a week or two, and they asked our neighbor to get the mail because they said, Jay wants to see if he got into McGill. Anyway, long story short, I'm in Europe, my parents are on vacation, and the neighbor calls my parents and says he didn't get in. Okay, so I didn't get in. They opened up a letter, he didn't get in. So I got into University of Ottawa, among other schools.
Shout out.
So
sorry, Jay.
Oh, really?
Alum, man.
All right. Cool. So I figured, okay, I'm going to go to Ottawa.
Nice.
My parents, who were so generous and amazing, they said, you know what, stay in Europe as long as you can. We'll go to Ottawa and get you an apartment.
Okay.
And we'll figure it out. So I stayed in. I came home a little bit early. Went to Ottawa to see this apartment. My parents got me a nice apartment. And I figured I'm going to Ottawa. This was, I don't know, probably last week in August or second to last week in August. But I decided I'm going to call the dean of McGill Law School and tell her the situation. I didn't get in, no hard feelings. Would it be all right if I came to see you, just so you can tell me what in the file caused you not to include me?
This is the lawyer in the making, right? Explaining your case. I like.
Yeah. So no, I was happy just to go and for her to explain me why I didn't get in. So, I'm a young guy. I had long hair, beard. I had cut off jean shorts with the white frills or whatever. I had a white tank top on, and I showed up. I mean, which is in retrospect, like, what was I thinking? So I show up like a crazy man to the dean of McGill's Law School. I walk in. I sit down, she opens the file, and she says, who told you didn't get in? So I explained the story. My parents were away, I was away, my neighbor. She goes, I don't know which school rejected you, but it wasn't us. You're still on the waiting list. And she said, I'm not really supposed to interview people, but tell me about yourself.
Wow.
So I did. We had a fantastic conversation. Wow. She was amazing. There was a great chemistry. whatever, we met, and that was it. The next morning, I'm lying in bed, the phone rings. The Dean of McGill Law calls me.
You. Wow.
Hi, is Jay there, please? Yes, speaking. Hi, it's Dean Juk here. I wanted to call you to tell you personally you're in. So, the point is, and that's a
amazing.
pattern. I'm always motivated to just get out there, talk to people who are interesting to me, just to explore, because I think the more open you are, the greater the odds you're going to find really great opportunities.
Wow. So had it not been for that
I don't know. I mean, like I say, maybe I would have gotten in anyway. Maybe I wouldn't have, because I was on the waiting list.
So, you might have been in Ottawa already established. You're rolling.
I don't know.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a fantastic story, man.
It's it's not 100% because of that, but it couldn't have hurt.
Yeah. But I guess the point is that you were proactive.
That's the point.
You weren't just idle and said, okay, you know what, I didn't get in. You said, look, okay, maybe I didn't get in, and if that's the case, fine. Let me at least know why. Tell me.
I didn't come from a position of defensiveness. I'm like, it's no hard feelings.
Exactly.
And she's like, well, she was actually impressed that I took the time to want to do that.
Wow.
So
speaking about family, and it sounds amazing, really, really supportive. I follow you on Instagram, as everyone should who's watching. But what I like about your sort of content sharing, first of all, it's really refreshing to see, someone with your sort of now leadership experience and everything that you're already doing to be this kind of open. And what I like too is the personal angle. So you share a lot about your family, even your personal interests. I know you sing, you play the piano. Talk to me a bit about your family and how and what important that is to you, but also how you create personally that work-life balance.
So for me, and it's reflected, I guess, in my social media posts, I don't look at human rights work, women's rights work, helping clients build world-class teams, any of it, family. I look at it all as one. I don't look at it as compartments. So I look at my whole world in a very holistic way, and in that sense, it's not really a matter of how do you find time for this or how do you find time for that. I prioritize. My family is always number one for me, and everything else revolves around that. But I generally just prioritize in a way that makes a lot of sense for me, and the tech investing and the tech advisory, as an example, even at the early stage, is very helpful for me, even when I'm doing very large corporate assignments. Because every corporation right now is worried about innovation, and they're looking for candidates that understand, that have their finger on the pulse of early stage tech and where the future is going, but also can play well corporately. So that's an example of how all of my worlds are intersected, because I sort of mirror the kinds of candidates they're looking for, which gives me a competitive advantage. But on the family side, I mean, I'm very fortunate. I have a wife who's a tremendous partner of mine, the most supportive, generous, wise person I've ever known. My kids are just wonderful friends of mine. And I take pride in being able to be friends with my kids, who share their music with me. So for example, I probably wouldn't be as up on music if it wasn't for my kids. They're constantly showing, hey, J. Cole just came out with a new song. You got to hear it, Dad. And I appreciate that. And the sports with my son, and it's the kids are friends of mine, but also respectful, which is just a wonderful combination. And so,
how do you make that balance work? I'm always curious because, often like it's obviously always like a kind of a fine line, but but you have that personal approach, but you still have, again, as you said, that kind of boundary.
Well, I think.
How do you do that?
Yeah, I think. Well, the friend side is I think I'm just young at heart. So
young soul.
So I'm a young soul. I love the things that the kids are interested in. I'm interested in the same things as they are.
Jay, you're on stage rapping, man. You're making me look like a baby boomer. I don't know what's going on here.
So that's the friend side.
Okay.
But the respect side is, once in a while I'll hear the kids sort of talking to me in a way like dissing me the way they might diss a friend. It's like, and I'll remind them, it's like, whoa, like I'm your dad, I'm your dad. I'm your friend. I love being your friend, but I nip it in the bud. And I'm lucky that it absorbs.
That's really cool.
So
talk to me about speaking about the stage. I know I was just kind of joking about that, but you actually did share a stage with a rapper, and you did a performance and a song for your son's bar mitzvah. How did that come about, and how do you put yourself out there, like in a way that you're fun and genuine and passionate?
I have a major passion for music.
Okay. Singing or playing instruments, both?
Both, as well as just listening.
Okay.
I just love music. So I took classical piano lessons from grade 1 to grade 5, and by grade 5 I began having a lot of written homework, written theory, music theory, which I didn't like. I found boring. And my friends were out playing street hockey, and I was like busy not only doing my regular homework, I was doing music homework, and I didn't like it. And I tried to convince my teacher at the time to just let me play, and she's like, no, in order to continue you have to do the written. And so I quit.
Wow.
And then I met a really great friend. His name is Mitch Magnet, really talented musician who taught himself how to play piano and write songs when I was up at camp when I was like 16. And he taught me a different way. He taught me how to improvise and how to be able to sort of, if you hand me any song sheet with chords, I could play it and then improvise in between. And that's actually a good way to learn how to songwrite as well.
Okay.
And we developed a relationship, and we wrote a bunch of songs together. And
what sort of things do you use? Like what kind of songs do you sing?
I love ballads. I
Okay.
love pop ballads. So the song you heard, it's essentially a ballad with like a cool beat and a rap, because I know my son likes hip hop.
Okay.
But I love ballads. So I've written a song for every member of my family.
Okay.
I wrote a song for, and I co-wrote most of this, actually all of it pretty much with this music partner of mine.
Okay.
But the story behind that song for my son was, it was time for his bar mitzvah, and we had a party that night, and I decided that I didn't want to do a speech. I wanted to surprise him with a song.
Change it up, huh?
Yeah, change it up a little bit.
That's a major switch, though. It's a major switch.
So I remembered there was this piece that my music writing partner Mitch put together, just improvising, doing a sound check with new equipment. But I found there was something very, very beautiful there. So I called him up and I said, would you mind if I took that and ran with it with a friend of mine, Aeon Clark, that's the guy on the song, who's actually legendary.
Very talented. Yeah.
He's legendary actually in the Toronto scene. He's got one of the best voices in the world.
Wow.
With a track record of having written with many of the biggest artists. And singing on tracks with some of the biggest artists. I got to know him from my daughter's bat mitzvah. He performed. He performed. So I hit him up and I said, look, I've got this piece of a song. Will you collaborate with me to finish it and to produce it in a cool way?
Wow.
And we'll perform it live and surprise my son with it. And he said, yeah, man, I'm in. Like, it ended up for him being one of his favorite experiences. We still talk about it.
That's really cool.
And we went in the studio, and he brought in a really tremendously talented piano player who helped produce it. And you see the result in the YouTube. And
that's amazing.
It's actually one of the most special moments in my life to be able to give that to my son.
Yeah. And even the lyrics, I mean, you kind of start, in the video at least that I saw, it was When I Become a Man, it was kind of touching in that sense.
Boys become a man.
Yeah. It's, what is that sort of experience like for you? Like what are you trying to pass on to your kids? I mean, from what you learn, whether it's modeling the behavior, but what do you hope that they one day become?
Just loving human beings.
Okay.
Yeah. Just wanted to show my son and my kids and my wife and my family and my friends. Just want to show them love, and instill in them the importance of giving to others.
In in a world that I guess even in a city, to style it back,
Yeah.
like Toronto, for example, you talk about love, and
Yeah.
I think there is that. But also, I mean, we're sort of so driven here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you see it like at 5, 6 a.m. People are like just running towards work, and there's a huge startup community as well. There's something, a component that, especially being an investor, right, an angel on the side, you also talk about mental health. It's something you work with Director X on. And how important is that to you? What sort of advice would you give? Because I know a lot of entrepreneurs or friends of mine, and they struggle with that aspect. You know, the grind, hustle. I was, sort of, how do you say it? Kind of oblivious of that as well. For me, it was like hustle, 100%, no sleep. Everybody kind of goes through that phase.
Yeah.
What advice would you have?
I think focusing on mental health is an extremely important thing, and there's definitely a number of ways you can come at it depending on what works for you.
Okay.
I think having some white space and empty space to be able to just be by yourself.
Just to dial back.
Just to dial back, whether it means going for walks,
playing the piano.
if you can, massage therapy. It could be meditation. I enjoy playing the piano. I find that very, very relaxing. When I'm working I work pretty much 7 days a week.
Yeah.
When I'm working on the weekend, I'll take a lot of piano breaks.
Okay.
There's just so many things that you can do. Whatever works for you. Exercise is really important. Eating well, but if you don't getting as much sleep as you can.
Right.
I could probably use more sleep than I get, but at least being cognizant of it is really, really important. The project that I'm supporting Director X on, we did an article in the Toronto Star on that. It relates to gun violence,
which I saw him speak recently at that socialite conference.
Yeah, so there's, it was sort of the summer of the gun, sadly, in Toronto. It's like becoming like any other American city, and that has to stop. And Director X, unfortunately, was shot. He wasn't the intended victim, like in 2015 or so, and he began looking at the issue really deeply, including the root causes, and he came to understand that the prefrontal cortex is the place in the brain where decisions are made, and if that area of the brain is small or deficient, there's a higher likelihood of someone lashing out irrationally with violence, and we've come to study the issue and to understand that there's been examples of situations like in San Francisco. There was a school which had sadly a lot of violence in and around it, and absenteeism, and they put in this meditation program, and a year later the results were astounding. It's one of the happiest schools now in San Francisco. Absenteeism has gone way, way down. Kids are much more engaged and much more motivated. They did something similar in a prison in Mexico, which is a very violent prison. Yeah. And the results have been just unbelievable. So now we're working on implementing a pilot program or in like 3 schools right now in Toronto, and seeing the results that we can come up with, and then build it and continue building programs from there really across the world. The good news is this prefrontal cortex can grow back in a much healthier way through mindful meditation.
Yeah, especially, I mean, if you have a good support system. I saw recently Denzel Washington was sort of talking about, the generational differences, but he really pointed to parents. He said, look, like if my parents were abusive and they did certain things to hurt me or really cause me enduring pain, I'm going to now lash out and continue that.
That's
then
right.
I'm going to bring that to my kids, and it's never really going to solve itself.
That's right.
It's really a fuel to the fire.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, a lot of individuals who are in this predicament lack that true support system, whether it's friends or partners.
Well, they say that kids who've gone through neglect and abuse are the ones that have these deficiencies in the prefrontal cortex.
Interesting.
Yeah, but the good news is it can be fixed. It can be improved. Yeah.
What's a day in the what's a sort of day in the life look like for Jay? I think that especially just having, honestly, I don't know how much we spent so far, but it's been like 30 minutes and we're talking about so much, right? So many things going on in your world. So just something that kind of popped up in my head is, and there might not be a day to day, but give us an example. Like you wake up, how does your day start running?
Right. Every day, every week is different. I just got back from Los Angeles. I was in Los Angeles all week, and with some tremendous meetings and events and whatnot, including Move the Dial, which is another movement to help advance women that I'm deeply involved in.
Shout out to Jovi Kovitz.
Yes, Jody Kovitz. But typically I'm up at like 6 in the morning.
Okay.
Have breakfast at home, unless I have a breakfast meeting. Okay. And I head to the office.
Shake and bake then.
Shake and bake. Let's make it happen, man. Yeah. And then I'm pretty much booked all day with meetings and whatnot. I try to have some white space to answer emails as much as I can, and I'm typically home pretty late.
Are you big on reading? I know that in the back there we saw a couple books. Are you reading anything now, or a couple of recommendations from Jay?
Yeah, I haven't been reading that much in terms of books, but I'm constantly consuming current events, articles, and it's a very, very wide range of interest: philosophical, political, business. It's a really, really wide range of consumption, but I haven't been reading that many books of late. Yeah.
What's one thing, if you were to look back, I'm just doing like these rapid ones, but what's one thing, if you look back, something that you learned that kind of changed your life as a tipping point?
Well, when I was younger, I was a little bit quicker to, when I was having discussions with people about politics or business or whatever, right. A little bit quicker to disagree, because I don't, and in the interest of having a fulsome conversation. Yeah. But what I found, because I don't take those kinds of conversations personally, I just find them really, really interesting. But what I found is I've got to read the audience a little bit better, because a lot of people take things really personally, and there's no point. Yeah. And there's no point engaging or disagreeing. I actually find it a compliment when someone will disagree, and we'll go back and forth, and we'll have deep philosophical disagreements or discussions. But I've learned as I've gotten older to dial it back again and read the audience, who can I shouldn't say handle it, but who doesn't take things personally.
Who's receptive?
If you understand, who's receptive? Yeah, exactly.
What's your favorite song? I got to ask this one. I know it's going to be hard, Jay. You got to give me one.
Oh my God.
And I prefer it if you sing it. I don't know. Just give me a little tune, if I know it. Are you a Sinatra fan? I just got
Imagine John Lennon.
Really?
Imagine John Lennon. Yeah, I love Sinatra. I love
huge Sinatra fan, man. Yeah. What's funny is I always used to joke that I would say I'm a millennial stuck in a baby boomer's body, because on the wall right behind my bed I have a huge Sinatra poster that says "Confidence is King," and I have a vinyl right next to it, and I always play like "Fly Me to the Moon" and "Come Fly with Me."
Oh yeah. I know all those songs. I love all those songs. I love every single genre of music. I love.
You can find kind of art in.
Yeah.
Last thing before we end this, and I really appreciate this conversation, man.
My pleasure.
I'm sure a lot of people are going to appreciate it too. What's that one thing that you would leave someone with right now? Think, in my community, it's again 20 to 30. Someone maybe starting out their career, still in school, or in the midst of it. Mm-hmm. What would you give as pearls? Could be 1, 2, or 3.
Chase your passions. Chase your dreams. Everything else will fall into place.
Jay Rosenzweig, it's a pleasure, man. Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Cheers, guys.